It all started as a simple traffic stop, a typical encounter that could have been forgotten in the blur of an officer's daily routine. But for one officer, this particular moment would unfold into something far more significant, an unexpected turning point that would alter the trajectory of his career. The sun was beginning to set over the city of Arlington, casting long shadows across the streets. Robert James was heading home after a long day at work, the low hum of his car offering a welcome contrast to the hustle and bustle of the urban environment. As he adjusted the air conditioning, his mind shifted from the office to the comfort of his own home, and the music from the radio served as a calming background to his thoughts. As he approached a traffic light, the yellow light flashed in front of him. He gently applied the brakes, bringing his car to a smooth stop just as the light turned red. However, within seconds, he noticed the flashing blue lights of a police vehicle behind him, followed by the sharp sound of siren. Frowning, Robert looked into the rearview mirror, trying to gauge the situation. The officer's vehicle pulled up behind him, and he slowly steered his car to the side of the road. With a calm but wary motion, he rolled down his window just as the officer got out of his car. Officer Daniel West was a man in his early 30s, with a tight military-style haircut and an air of confidence that suggested he was well accustomed to wielding authority. He walked toward Robert's car, his hand resting on his belt in a posture that exuded control. "License and registration," West commanded flatly, his voice carrying an edge of authority. Robert didn't hesitate, pulling out the necessary documents from his glove box and handing them over. As he did so, he couldn't help but notice how closely the officer was scrutinizing him. There was an intensity in West's gaze, as if he were searching for any excuse to escalate the situation. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" West asked, his face now just inches from Robert's window. "I'm not entirely sure," Robert replied calmly, maintaining an even tone. "Could you clarify?" "You didn't come to a full stop at the light," West said, his words dripping with a sense of certainty. Robert furrowed his brow, thinking for a moment before nodding slightly. "I understand," he said. "I did slow down, but I see now I didn't come to a full stop. I apologize." West seemed to linger for a moment, his gaze sharp as he studied Robert with increasing suspicion. The situation was no longer just about a traffic violation for the officer. He could sense something more, and his body language shifted ever so slightly, indicating a shift in his intent. "Not from around here, are you?" West asked, glancing at Robert's identification. Robert paused before responding. "I moved here recently. My address is listed on my license," he explained, his voice neutral. But West wasn't listening anymore. His questioning grew more aggressive, his words more pointed as he continued to pry. "So, where exactly were you rushing off to?" West asked, leaning closer to Robert's window. "Just heading home," Robert replied, maintaining the same calm tone. The change in atmosphere was palpable now. West's earlier professional detachment had melted away, replaced by something more personal, something resembling suspicion. But Robert wasn't fazed. He remained as composed as ever, though his mind was starting to race. There was something about the officer's demeanor that was beginning to set off alarm bells. West seemed to take offense at Robert's calmness. His body language was more pronounced now, and he leaned in further. "I'm going to need you to step out of the car," West said abruptly, his voice carrying the same authoritative tone. "Is there a particular reason why?" Robert asked, his voice steady but now tinged with curiosity. West's lips curled into a thin smile. "I asked you to step out. Let's not make this any more complicated than it needs to be," he said, a hint of menace in his words. Robert exhaled slowly, taking a moment before opening his door and stepping out of the car. As he did, West's eyes scanned him from head to toe, assessing his every move. Robert stood a few inches taller than the officer, broad-shouldered but not imposing. His tailored suit suggested a man who was well put together, but not a threat. However, none of that seemed to matter now. "Stand over there," West said, pointing toward the front of the car. His eyes remained fixed on Robert's every movement as he made his way over. "Are you looking for something specific?" Robert asked, his voice calm but filled with an undercurrent of suspicion. "Just a standard search," West said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We've had some issues in this area recently." Robert turned to face him, his gaze steady. Issues with businessmen in suits driving sedans? Or is there something more specific you're concerned about? The question seemed to rattle West. For a split second, his composure faltered, his hand moving instinctively toward his belt. He recovered quickly, though, and forced a smile. "Watch your tone," he warned, his voice taking on a harsher edge. "I'm simply asking a question," Robert replied evenly, his gaze unwavering. There was no defiance in his voice, but there was a quiet strength that seemed to unsettle the officer. West took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. "You seem to know an awful lot about procedure. Are you hiding something?" Robert paused, letting the tension hang in the air. "No, officer. I'd just like to understand the purpose behind these interactions. Transparency is key, don't you think?" West scoffed, pacing in front of Robert's car, clearly unsettled by his calm demeanor. "You seem confident," West muttered, "like you know exactly how this is going to go." Robert tilted his head. "Confidence isn't the issue, officer. Respect is." West froze, caught off guard for the first time. The silence between them thickened, and Robert felt the power shift. This wasn't just a routine stop anymore. It was a battle of wills. "I'm going to need you to step out and place your hands on the car," West ordered sharply. "I'm checking for weapons." Robert raised an eyebrow. "Weapons? Do I look like I'm armed?" West's expression darkened. "I don't repeat myself." With a measured calm, Robert turned and placed his hands on the car's hood. West's movements were quick, more aggressive than necessary, as he conducted the search. But Robert didn't flinch, didn't tense up. He stood still, unwavering. After a moment, West muttered, "You're clear," stepping back reluctantly. Robert turned and faced him. "Naturally. Now, officer, if you're finished." West clenched his jaw. "I'm not done," his voice rising slightly. "You seem to know a lot about my authority. Care to explain why?" Robert crossed his arms, his posture relaxed despite the tension. "I've had my share of encounters with law enforcement," he said. "Let's just say I've learned a few things." West's eyes narrowed. "Are you a lawyer?" Robert smiled faintly. "Something like that." West stepped closer, almost invading Robert's space, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Do you think you're smarter than me? Think you can talk your way out of this?" Robert met his gaze without flinching. "I think nothing, officer. I simply believe in justice. And right now, I don't see much of it here." West's composure cracked. "Justice?" he repeated in disbelief. "You think this is about justice?" Robert understood exactly what West meant. "People like me?" he asked softly, the weight of the words clear. West recoiled, realizing his slip-up. "You understand what I mean," he muttered, but his tone lacked confidence. "I believe I do," Robert replied sharply. "And I think we both know this stopped being about a traffic stop a long time ago." West opened his mouth to respond, but couldn't find the words. The power had shifted, and for the first time, he was no longer in control. "Officer, I think it's time you learned who I am," Robert said, his voice steady. West's expression hardened. "I don't care who you are," he shot back, though there was a hint of uncertainty now. Robert slowly reached into his pocket. "I think you should see this," he said coolly, pulling out a gleaming badge. "Robert James," he said calmly, "Head of Internal Affairs, Arlington Police Department." West froze, his eyes darting between the badge and Robert's face. "Internal Affairs?" he stammered. "Yes," Robert interrupted, his voice firm. "I oversee officer conduct. I ensure that those who wear the badge do so with integrity." West's face drained of color. He took a step back as the weight of his actions sank in. Robert stepped forward, closing the gap. "Do you know what's been most disturbing about this?" Robert asked, his voice steady. "It's not just the profiling, though that's bad enough. It's that you did all of this without realizing who you were dealing with. You assumed I wouldn't know my rights. You assumed I wouldn't understand the laws you're sworn to uphold." Robert confronted West, demanding accountability, leading to systemic reform efforts.